today we talk a little bit about nutrient cycling, because here at Rosamond we don't use any inputs, so we don't use any synthetic fertilizers or any herbicides, insecticides or anything like that. And so the reason we can get away with that is because we're spending a lot of time and effort building our microbial community who are going to do that for us. There's a couple of different ways that plants feed using microbes in the soil, but one of the main ways is what's sometimes referred to as the poop loop. We can also think of it in terms of the detrital or decomposition pathway. So essentially what we need is a photosynthesizing plant, which I know I messed up the last time I talked about this, but a plant actually takes in carbon dioxide, sunlight and moisture from the soil, and then generates oxygen, which it puts out, generates carbohydrates from that carbon dioxide, which are simple sugars, and it'll put these down into the soil to feed the microbes in the soil. So we've got our photosynthesizing plant, and then we have our soil food web. Our soil food web consists of several different trophic levels, and the first level is the detritus. So that's the organic matter that's in the soil, and that could come from grass clippings or leaves falling off a tree, twigs, old fruit that's fallen off trees, and it also comes from things that we put in the soil like compost or wood chips on our paths, or even things like chop and drop weeds or grass clippings. So all that is organic matter. It's detritus that's in the soil. So our first trophic level is the detritus in the soil, so all the organic matter. And then the second trophic level is the decomposers. And there are two decomposing elements, which are the fungi and the bacteria. And you can think of them as partners or co-workers. They work in unison to decompose all the detrital matter in the soil. The fungi works on the browner, woodier, higher carbon materials. So that would be like dead leaves and mulch or wood chips. And the bacteria works on the greener, juicier, fresher, wetter materials. So that would be like fruit or grass clippings or chop and drop weeds. I want to point out that the fungi, these are saprophytic fungi. So it's a group of fungi that only works with dead plant material. They don't make associations with living plants, but we'll talk about the fungi that do another time. But for now, we're talking about saprophytic fungi. If you go for a walk in the woods and you step on a log that's gone a bit spongy, it's the saprophytic fungi that are breaking that down, decomposing it. They put out acidic enzymes. Just like we have enzymes in our tummies to digest our food, they put these acids out into the soil, digest that wood, and then take that nutrient back, and they hold it in their bodies. So at that point it's locked up in the fungal hyphae in the soil. And it's similar with the bacteria. The bacteria are putting out alkaline enzymes. They're breaking down the green material, and they're taking those nutrients back into their bodies. So we've had the detritus, and now we've got the decomposers that are breaking that detrital matter down. Now we need the rest of the soil food web, which are the fungal and bacterial eating nematodes. They're protozoa, they're worms, they are bugs in the soil like little beetles and that kind of thing. And then they are maybe birds and small mammals like moles. And they will prey on one another and also prey on those decomposers. So a nematode or protozoa will eat the fungi and eat millions and millions of bacteria. And when they take those nutrients from the fungi and bacteria into their bodies, then that builds up into something called a vacuole, or what we would call poop. And when they eliminate that poop into the soil right in the root zone of the plants, that is the nutrient that is available to the plants, and it's so close and it just can be sucked up into the roots. So I think a really interesting thing here to consider is that we're all made up of a ratio of carbon to nitrogen. We all are. Everything in our world is made up of a carbon to nitrogen ratio. And a bacteria has a ratio of 5 carbons to 1 nitrogen. But the thing that eats a bacteria is a protozoa. And a protozoa has a slightly different ratio. They have a ratio of 30 carbons to 1 nitrogen. So when a protozoa comes along and eats those bacteria, if it eats 6 bacteria, it gets its 30 carbons that it needs, but it only needs 1 nitrogen. Now it ends up with 6 nitrogens because it's eaten 6 bacteria, it'll get 6 nitrogens, but it only needs 1. So those excess 5 nitrogen, they create the vacuole, they create the excess nutrients in that protozoa that the protozoa then poops out. So that nitrogen, that excess nitrogen, is now right there in the root zone of that plant. And it gets sucked in by something called simple diffusion, which you can think of as just sort of like water finding its own level. If the concentration of nitrogen outside the root is higher than inside the root, it will equalize. So the nitrate will diffuse into the root, and then it will be equal inside and outside the root. And at that point you might think, okay, well now what happens? Because now everything will come to a stop. But actually the plant can't use the nitrate. It has to convert that into different forms because it's trying to make a protein. So it converts it from nitrate to nitrite to ammonia to amino acids and on. So as the nitrate is converted, it creates a deficit. And so more nitrate can come in from the rhizosphere, the area around the roots. And so that's how the nutrients are being cycled. They're going from the detrital matter into the bacteria and fungi that are decomposing it, and then those are being fed on, and then that excess nutrient is being deposited in the soil and it's diffusing into the plant. So that's our first pathway of nutrient cycling.